So this is my second year of appreciation of songs. I recently did 1965 and looked at the top 20 songs from that year. Now I'm moved on a year, I'm now 12 years old. We're into 1966. Famous for the fact that England won the Soccer World Cup amongst other things. But I'm back on the appreciation of music because it is my first love, closely followed by movies. And I'm looking at the best songs from that year, and this is my intro. There's some tremendous material here, and we'll be getting stuck in to the songs that made the cut. 20 down to 11 as first off, and then the top 10 in a second video. So anyway, let's get to it. So about time we got started with this 1966 Roll of Honour. The one slight problem, I found it almost impossible to keep it down to 20. Firstly, I'm going to run through the ones that didn't make the cut, and I'll explain the issue about the 20. Amongst the great songs that didn't get into my top 20 were, in no particular order, Rainy Day Women, Bob Dylan, Let's Hang On from the Four Seasons, All or Nothing, Small Faces, Happy Jack from The Who, Rolling Stones, Out of Time. A great song, Lee Dorsey, Working in a Coal Mine, The Byrds, 8 Miles High, The Hollies, Bus Stop. They had a glut of hits around about this time. The great James Brown, I Got You, I Feel Good. And the Monkees, I'm a Believer. And let's try and get this through. Frank Sinatra, Strangers in the Night, beautiful song. Mamas and the Papas, California Dreaming. Loving Spoonful, Daydream. Seem to recall that was a number one in the UK. Simon and Garfunkel, Homeward Bound. The Beach Boys, Sloop John B. Spencer Davis Group, Keep On Running. That was another huge hit with a very, very young Stevie Winwood on lead vocals. And Get Ready by The Temptations. So let's get going. It's 1966, and this is my top 20 songs from that year. One big problem though, there's not 20 songs, there's 22. Yeah, I had some, I'd whittled it down to 20, and then inadvertently I'd forgotten to, so I've added them in, and so we're going to have 22 to 11, and then 10 to 1 in 2 videos. So let's get started. 22 is one of the ones I'd forgotten about, River Deep Mountain High, credited to Ike and Tina Turner. Considered by Phil Spector, the producer, to be his best work, and it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in '99, so certainly a high point. Single didn't do that well in the US, but was pretty successful in the UK, and Spector was pretty pleased with the response, although after it he disappeared from the music industry and his decline plummeted. However, he saw Ike and Tina Turner at a club on the Sunset Street in Las Vegas, and invited them to appear on the big TNT. And he was impressed by Tina, and so he asked Ike, could he use her with his band The Wrecking Crew to do this song, this Wall of Sound production. Unfortunately, it cost a hell of a lot of money because the Turners, mainly Ike, had just got a new record deal, and so as it wasn't going to be on that record label, Spector had to pay $20,000 just to use their name on the recording. But anyway, it was a huge success. It's a great song. There isn't any Ike on it, of course. It's just Tina, and it really, when I first heard it on the radio, I thought, wow, this is something special. Really powerful vocals, powerful sound, and a tremendous piece of work. So to 21 then, and this is You Keep Me Hanging On by the Supremes. The single was rooted in what they call proto-funk and rhythm and blues, and was quite a contrast from their other song that came out that year, You Can't Hurry Love. More about that later. And there's a great guitar part in it, which apparently was originated from a Morse code-like radio sound effect, typically used in news announcements. It was written by the infamous trio of Lament Dozier and Brian and Eddie Holland, and multi-tracked, used the influence of Phil Spector and George Martin in this style of recording. Florence Ballard has a brief vocal, but it's mainly Diana, and it's awesome. I love it. Personnel: Diana Ross, Florence Ballard and Mary Wilson, with the Funk Brothers again on the instrumental parts. It's another song that really relates how the man is controlling the woman, abusing the woman, not looking after the woman, and won't let her go, keeping an iron grip on things. Great single. So to 20 then, Working My Way Back to You by the Four Seasons. Now I struggled really both in the 65 selections and these. I was desperate to get a Four Seasons song in there because I really like their stuff. Frankie Valli, a great singer, and those sort of harmony bands were extremely popular in the late 50s, early 60s. So I ended up choosing this one, and it's written by Sandy Linzer and Denny Randall. A big hit in the UK, and it was a minor hit in the US. There were others. Let's Hang On comes to mind, which probably was more popular, but I particularly like this one. Frankie Valli on lead vocals, and of course the background vocals, Tommy DeVito, Charles Calello and Bob Gaudio, and they were all playing as well on this one, bass, guitar and keyboards respectively. It's another love song really, trying to get back to your girl that you thought you'd lost. All pretty predictable sort of lyrically, but great song. 19, we got Substitute by The Who. Inspired actually by the tracks of My Tears, apparently. Pete Sounder became obsessed with a line in that song, although she may be cute, she's just a substitute. And this then led him to celebrate the word with a song of his own. The riff used in the verses was derived from a single by Rob Storm and the Whispers. I didn't know this, I got this off Wikipedia, Where Is My Girl? And an acknowledgement later from Townsend that he, on hearing the record, he saw it reviewed in the Melody Maker. The guitar solo is actually played by Entwistle here. It's a bass guitar solo. He really got into it, it has to be said, and they actually got so wound into the idea of using the bass, they turned the volume up and it couldn't get mixed out, so it ended up as a solo. It's a really great thumping track by The Who, and a great follow-up to My Generation. I love it, and of course the title really sums it all up. You know, distractions for young males, but because they can't actually do their first choice. At 18 then, it's Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones. #1 hit on Billboard and the UK, and it became their 3rd #1 single in the US and 6th in the UK. The lyrics describe depression, apparently, through the use of colour-based metaphors. And although it was a basic standard pop arrangement, Mick Jagger compared it to songs for Jewish weddings. Not quite sure where that came from, which describes extreme grief by one stunned by an unexpected loss, possibly a wife, a lover, or a partner. And Jagger also took inspiration from the book Ulysses by James Joyce, which was published in 1922, and referred to a sentence there, an excerpt: "I have to turn my head until my darkness goes," about desperation and desolation amidst the world. So all in all, a pretty depressing sort of subject matter. The band's leader, Brian Jones, though, he made an appearance on sitar here, following his interest in Moroccan music, and it was really the first time we'd heard this instrument. Before, of course, he had discussions with George Harrison, who then brought the instrument to the Beatles. So lots of heavy bass from Wyman on here, and low-pitched drumming from Charlie Watts, with a bolero-style Keith Richards acoustic guitar intro. Brilliant song. Up to 17 now. We got Uptight, Everything's Alright by Stevie Wonder. Or was he called Little Stevie Wonder? I'm not too sure. I think he'd become about 16 when this came out, so maybe they dropped the little. It was very much a very significant release for Stevie. Although he'd had a few hits, done reasonably well, it was this one that really was a launch pad for his Motown career with Berry Gordy. Yeah, he was about 16, and his voice was starting to change, becoming more of a tenor, and he got this song from Sylvia Moy and Henry Cosby, and put his own special feel to it, and the next minute we had a super hit. He played keyboards on the song, and the Funk Brothers were also on the instrumentation, and backing vocals were the Adantes. I didn't know that. It's really a celebration of dealing with life's difficulties, being poor, but shining through, and getting the best out of what you've got. References to getting your clothes right to make you feel right, and also references to getting into girls. At 16 now, at 16 it's Paperback Writer by the Beatles, written primarily by Paul, although there was a little bit of input from John Lennon, and it was released as a single in May 1966, topped the charts in many countries, but of course Britain and the States were the two big markets. McCartney states that it was inspired by his aunt, who asked, could he write a single that's not about love? So he did. Paperback was a word that he liked, and so it's about writing a letter, and fairly simplistic, nothing too earth-shattering about the lyrics, but it's basically writing a letter to a publisher, and that's how it came about. Paperback Writer, superb song, love it to death. To 15 then, this is The Shape of Things by the Yardbirds. It's got a very Eastern sounding feel to it. A lot of feedback guitar on here, and apparently it was it's been interpreted as being a very anti-war, pro-environmental song, reading between the lines in the lyrics. That's what some music writers suggested, and also they suggested that it was an early psychedelic rock sound, but it was the first Yardbirds composition to become a real big hit, courtesy of Jeff Beck, of course, who started to explore feedback considerably and controlled the guitar's resonant points and bending the strings. It was groundbreaking, really, and it influenced McCartney on his bass playing, and latterly Jimi Hendrix on his guitar playing. The lyrics, as I say, anti-war, and I love it. It's a tremendous song, and I listen to it regularly. Again, a suggestion that it was anti-war with regard to the Vietnam War. Up to 14 now. This is Sunny Afternoon by the Kinks. This apparently lyrically, Davis was having a go at the Labour government for the high level of progressive tax that was now being taken from rich, including rich pop stars. It's got a strong music hall flavour, and the lyrical focus is in that vein. And it was a bit of a departure from the band, although a well-respected man, the earlier single, was leaning in that direction, away from the hard-driven power chord rock. But it was apparently written at home by Davis when he was feeling a bit poorly, on his upright white piano, and he was living in this 60s house with orange walls and green furniture, and his 1-year-old daughter was playing around, and that's prompted the opening riff, and he refers to his clothing as well. It's all about the, as he put it, I felt as though through a dusty fallen aristocrat who'd come from old money as opposed to the wealth I created for myself. And he talks at some length about this song. It really grows on you, and it really epitomises for me hot summer afternoons in the sunny English countryside. Anyway, the Kinks, Sunny Afternoon. Now at 13, that second Supreme song that I referred to earlier, You Can't Hurry Love. Apparently a memory from mother's words of encouragement to the girls, and particularly with regard to I think I'm not quite sure which girl, Diana Ross I believe. Anyway, it showcases the developing sound of the band. It's got a tinge of gospel inspiration from a 50s song written sometime before by Dorothy L. Love Coates, and that's what I found out about this one. And of course the title reflects what the lyric is about, and it was another huge hit for these girls who were really taking music by storm up there in Berry Gordy land in Motown in Detroit. So to 12, Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix Experience. This was originally brought to people's ears by a folk rock singer called Tim Rose. His version was much slower, but he is apparently recognised as the one that Jimmy caught an ear to via his manager, Chaz Chandler, who of course was a bass player with the Animals. When Chaz heard it, heard Rose performing, he decided he needed to find somebody to do the song. Duly discovered Jimi Hendrix, brought him back to the UK and got him in the studio, and the rest is history, as they say. But of course, once Hendrix got hold of it, it radically changed and became a powerful heavy rock number, which was his first big single in the UK. It didn't do much in America, actually, but that probably reflected Jimmy's early career anyway. And it was also the last song he sang at the Woodstock Festival in 1969. In fact, it was the last song of this festival. So it's a pretty vital pop piece of rock music history, and a wonderful introduction to the genius of one James Marshall Hendrix. So to conclude this part one of my 1966 top 22 songs is the number 11 song, I Know I'm Losing You, recorded by The Temptation, produced by Norman Whitfield, and became a huge number one hit. Lead vocals by David Ruffin, and in the background, of course, Eddie Kendricks, Paul Williams, Otis Williams and Melvin Franklin. Guitar by the great Cornelius Grant, and other rhythms from the Funk Brothers. It was later done by Rod Stewart, and it was a huge hit for him as well, but this is a much far superior version. It's The Temptation, it's number 11, I Know I'm Losing You.